The spaceport was alive with noise and motion. Hovering vehicles zoomed past, and alien merchants shouted their prices across wide, crowded plazas. Towering aliens with scales and multiple limbs walked side by side with humans, each one going about their business in a city that seemed too vast to ever sleep. Among the crowd, weaving carefully between taller legs and robotic carts, was Lyra. She was small, very small. Even for her species, she barely reached the knees of most adults. Her short stature had made life difficult, especially here, where size and strength were respected more than intelligence or determination. She carried a small crate in her arms, her muscles straining just enough to keep it from slipping. The crate was light compared to the massive containers others carried, but her small size made it feel heavier than it was. Every step she took drew a mix of curious glances and barely hidden snickers. "Isn't that the tiny courier?" One of the taller aliens whispered, his voice dripping with amusement. He had 6 arms, each capable of lifting several crates at once. "She's barely going to make it across the hub." Lyra ignored them. She had learned early in life that listening to others' opinions only slowed her down. Her mind was focused on the task, not the judgment. She stepped carefully over a loose cable, her boots making soft clunks on the metallic floor. The crowd parted slightly as she moved forward, though some observers couldn't hide their laughter. By the time she reached the loading area, she was breathing slightly heavier than usual. The air here smelled of fuel and ozone, and the hum of machinery filled the space. Crates stacked higher than her head loomed on either side, and automated loaders moved with mechanical precision, effortlessly lifting and transporting massive containers. "Lyra, need help with that?" called one of the hub workers. His tone was polite enough, but the smirk on his face betrayed his doubt. He was a young alien with broad shoulders, his height alone making him seem superior. "I've got it," Lyra replied firmly, keeping her eyes on the crate. She lifted it a little higher, feeling the weight in her arms. Her fingers gripped the edges tightly, and she balanced carefully as she walked toward the storage bay. The taller aliens watched her with disbelief. Many shook their heads, muttering that she was wasting her time. "Why doesn't she just quit?" "She's too small for this work," one said. Another added, "Even a child could do better." Lyra ignored them all. She had faced this kind of ridicule her entire life. Being small meant people underestimated her, assumed she was weak or useless. But she had learned ways to turn her size into an advantage. Her agility and quick thinking often allowed her to do things that larger aliens couldn't. As she reached the far side of the loading area, a sudden rumble echoed through the hall. A large container stacked precariously above several smaller crates began to tilt. The massive weight threatened to crash down, and for a moment chaos erupted. Smaller aliens scattered, and even the larger ones hesitated, unsure of how to react. Lyra froze for a split second, calculating. The container was huge, far too heavy for anyone to lift without machinery, and it was moving fast. If it fell, it would crush everything beneath it, including her. Her heart raced, but she didn't back down. Without thinking twice, she dashed forward. Her small size allowed her to slip between the larger crates and closer to the tipping container than anyone else could. She grabbed the nearest corner and used her body as a wedge, pressing with all her strength against the falling mass. Her arms burned and her legs shook under the effort, but she held firm. "Move. Get out of the way!" shouted one of the bigger aliens, finally realizing the danger. Most of them fled to safer ground, leaving her to act alone. Time seemed to stretch as Lyra strained against the enormous container. She shifted her grip, sliding slightly to adjust her leverage. She could feel the weight pressing down, her muscles screaming in protest, but she refused to let go. Every calculation she had made over years of practice told her exactly where to push and how to balance the container. With a final burst of effort, she stabilized it. The container stopped tipping, wobbling slightly, but it remained upright. A hush fell over the crowd as everyone realized what had just happened. Even the automated loaders paused their work, as if unsure how to process the small alien who had just saved dozens of crates from destruction. Lyra's chest heaved, sweat dripping from her brow. She stepped back carefully, breathing hard but standing tall despite her exhaustion. Around her, the once dismissive aliens stared in stunned silence. For a moment, no one said anything. Then slowly, a few of the taller ones muttered, "Did she
just stop that by herself?"
"She's tiny," another said, shaking his head. "But she actually did it." From the edge of the crowd, Jack watched. Jack was a human bus driver who spent his days ferrying passengers across the sprawling city. He had seen many strange things in the spaceport, but what Lyra had just done caught his attention in a way nothing else had. He wasn't impressed because of size or power. He recognized skill, determination, and courage. Jack leaned against the railing, a small smile forming on his face. Most of the aliens were too proud, too focused on appearances to see what was really important. But he saw it clearly. Lyra had saved lives with nothing but her mind, her agility, and her determination. She didn't need to be tall or strong in the usual sense. She had strength in ways the others couldn't understand. As the crowd slowly dispersed, still murmuring in shock, Lyra picked up her crate again and started toward the storage bay. Her small shoulders still bore the weight, but there was a new sense of confidence in her step. She had proved something, not just to the aliens around her, but to herself. She was capable, even if the world refused to recognize it. Jack followed quietly, keeping a respectful distance. When Lyra reached the edge of the storage area, he called out, "Hey, you handled that well back there." Lyra paused, turning slightly to look at him. She was used to dismissive comments, not genuine recognition. "Thanks," she replied cautiously, unsure what to make of the human. "I've been watching," Jack said, shrugging. "Most of them only see how tall or big someone is. They don't notice skill or courage. You handled that container like it was nothing." Lyra blinked, surprised by his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not with respect, anyway. I just did what had to be done," she said softly. "That's exactly what makes you strong," Jack replied. He paused, looking around at the busy spaceport. "Listen, I'm driving a bus across the city later. If you want, I can give you a ride. Might be a good way to unwind after today's excitement." Lyra hesitated. She was used to working alone and being underestimated, but there was something about this human. He didn't treat her like she was less than anyone else. There was no mockery, no hidden judgment, just recognition. "Okay," she said finally, a small smile forming. "I'll take the ride." Jack nodded, returning her smile. "Good. You deserve it." As they walked toward the bus station, Lyra couldn't help but notice how different this human seemed from everyone else in the spaceport. Most aliens judged her immediately based on her size, ignoring everything else. Jack didn't. He saw her determination, her skill, her courage. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt like someone truly understood her. The bus station was crowded, filled with passengers from different worlds and species. Lyra stepped onto the bus carefully, finding a seat near the back. She was still aware of her small size, but the weight of everyone's judgment seemed lighter somehow. Jack climbed into the driver's seat, his eyes briefly meeting hers before focusing on the controls. The bus lifted off smoothly, hovering above the busy streets and glimmering towers of the city. Lyra watched as the world passed beneath her, feeling a mix of relief and exhilaration. For the first time, she didn't feel small or powerless. She had faced a real threat today and proven herself, not to the dismissive crowd, but to herself and to the human who had noticed her strength. "Not many people would have stepped in like you did," Jack said after a few moments of quiet. "Most would have frozen, or waited for someone else to fix it, but you took action." Lyra looked down at her hands, still slightly trembling from the effort. "I couldn't just stand there. Someone had to do something. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." "That's exactly why you're impressive," Jack said, smiling. "Courage isn't about being big or strong. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. You've got that in spades." Lyra felt warmth in her chest at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She had spent so long being underestimated, being dismissed for her size. Now for the first time she felt seen, and it felt good. The bus continued through the city, weaving between massive skyscrapers and busy skyways. Lyra watched the alien crowds below, imagining how surprised they would be if they knew what she had done today. She smiled quietly to herself, feeling a new sense of confidence. Jack glanced at her, noticing the change. "You know," he said, "I think you're going to do great things. Size doesn't matter. What matters is what you can do and how you think. You've already proven that." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing his words. For the first time, she believed them. Maybe being small wasn't a weakness after all. Maybe it was her advantage. As the bus glided toward the outskirts of the city, Lyra looked out at the horizon, her mind filled with possibilities. The bus moved smoothly over the shining streets of the spaceport city, cutting through the golden light of the afternoon sun. Lyra sat quietly near the back, her eyes following the bustling crowds below. She could feel her muscles relaxing after the earlier strain at the loading hub, but her mind remained alert. Jack, the human bus driver, kept glancing at her from time to time, offering small smiles of encouragement. Lyra had never felt so understood, and for the first time the dismissive stares of the others seemed distant and meaningless. The bus passed over a bridge that arched high above the busy landing pads. Lyra noticed a group of young aliens struggling with a large piece of equipment, clearly trying to lift it into the back of a hover truck. They were tall and strong, yet awkwardly uncoordinated, their movements clumsy. Lyra's instinct kicked in. Without thinking, she leaned over the railing of the bus and called out, "Hey, you need some help with that?" The aliens froze, glancing up in surprise. One of them, a particularly tall one with purple-scaled arms, laughed. "We don't need a tiny courier to show us how to lift," he said, shaking his head. "Step aside, short one." Lyra's gaze didn't waver. She stepped off the bus with careful precision, moving toward the struggling group. Her small size allowed her to slip between the larger aliens and closer to the equipment. Using her agility and careful leverage, she found the best angle and gave a controlled push. The massive piece of equipment moved with surprising ease, sliding smoothly into the hover truck. The taller aliens stared in disbelief, their mouths open. "Impressive," Jack said from the bus, his voice calm but firm. "You just made that look easy." Lyra turned and gave a small nod. "It's all about balance and timing," she explained. She had learned over the years that strength wasn't just about muscles. It was about thinking, planning, and using every advantage available. The crowd that had gathered began to murmur, some impressed, others still skeptical. But Lyra didn't care about their opinions anymore. She only cared about doing what was right. The bus ride continued, and soon the city's noise was replaced by the hum of machinery from the maintenance zone. This was a sprawling area where drones and automated vehicles were tested and repaired. Lyra had never been here before. Jack steered the bus carefully, passing rows of hovering drones and mechanical arms that moved with precise, swift motions. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the maintenance hub. A massive maintenance drone, one of the largest in the city, had malfunctioned. Its metal limbs swung wildly, and it began to topple over smaller drones, causing sparks and smoke to fly. Aliens scattered, unsure how to stop it. Even the strong ones hesitated, their instinct telling them to stay back. Lyra's heart raced, but her mind was calm. She had faced dangerous situations before, and this was no different. She turned to Jack. "We need to stop it before someone gets hurt," she said. Jack's eyes narrowed. "It's too big to handle alone," he said. "Are you sure?" Lyra didn't hesitate. "I'll find a way." She leaped off the bus, her small size allowing her to dodge flying debris and move closer to the malfunctioning drone. Sparks rained around her, and she ducked beneath a swinging mechanical arm. The drone was huge, taller than most buildings in the hub, with claw-like limbs that could crush anyone in an instant. Other aliens were screaming, running in every direction, but Lyra's focus was absolute. She noticed the control panels along the drone's body. Most of the larger aliens couldn't reach them without special tools, but Lyra could climb, slip between moving parts, and reach areas others couldn't. She jumped onto a support beam, then swung herself onto the drone's side. Her hands found a small hatch, and she pried it open with careful force. Inside, she saw the circuitry and control nodes, sparks flying as wires shorted. Lyra's mind worked quickly. She remembered how she had fixed broken machinery during her training at the hub. She pulled out a small tool from her belt and began rerouting power, moving carefully to avoid the live wires. Each motion had to be precise. One wrong move could cause the drone to collapse or explode. Jack guided her from below, shouting instructions and warnings. "Careful on the right side. Watch the arm, it's swinging faster now." Lyra nodded, focusing on the wires and circuits. Her small hands moved deftly, reconnecting critical nodes and disabling the rogue power source. Sparks flew, but she kept steady. The drone's movements began to slow, its wild swinging becoming more controlled. Lyra climbed higher, making final adjustments until finally, with a soft click, the drone froze. Its massive limbs stopped moving, and the lights on its body returned to normal. A hush fell over the maintenance hub. Aliens and humans alike stared at her in disbelief. Lyra climbed down carefully, her muscles trembling from the effort, but her face calm. Jack was the first to approach, his face lit with admiration. "You did it," he said simply. "You actually did it." Lyra shook her head, smiling slightly. "It wasn't just me. We worked together, I just saw a way." The surrounding aliens slowly began to approach, murmuring in shock. The ones who had mocked her before now looked at her with new respect. Some nodded, others stepped back, clearly realizing that they had misjudged her. Lyra didn't gloat. She simply straightened her small frame and looked around, noticing how different everything felt now. The fear had passed, and in its place was recognition, not just from Jack, but from everyone who had witnessed her actions. "You're remarkable," one of the taller aliens said quietly, his voice filled with awe. "We were wrong about you." Lyra gave a polite nod. "It's not about size," she said softly. "It's about what you do, not how tall you are." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, smiling. "Exactly. That's what I've been saying. Most people don't see that. You've got more courage and skill than anyone else here." The rest of the day passed with Lyra helping the hub workers safely secure the drones and equipment. The respect she earned wasn't just quiet acknowledgement. It was visible in every glance, every nod, every small smile. She had proven something important, not just to the aliens who had doubted her, but to herself. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the spaceport, Jack and Lyra returned to the bus. The streets were quieter now, the chaos of the day settling into calm. Lyra sat near the back again, watching the city lights reflect on the metal surfaces around her. She felt tired but satisfied. "You know," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I think today changed how people see you, not just here but everywhere. You've shown that strength isn't just about size or muscles. It's about courage, intelligence, and determination." Lyra smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I never thought anyone would understand that," she admitted. "Most people only look at what's on the outside." Jack shook his head, his smile calm and reassuring. "Most people, yes. But some of us, humans and otherwise, know better. You've got something special, Lyra. Don't let anyone make you forget that." The bus glided through the quiet streets, passing towering skyscrapers and landing pads that glimmered under the city lights. Lyra felt a sense of calm she had never known. She had faced danger, proven her worth, and earned respect. More importantly, she had discovered that her size was never a limitation. It was part of what made her unique. By the time the bus returned to the main terminal, Lyra felt a quiet pride in herself. The dismissive stares, the mocking comments, the disbelief, all of it had faded into memory. She was no longer the alien everyone underestimated. She was Lyra, a small alien with incredible skill, courage, and determination, and she had a human friend who saw her for who she truly was. Jack parked the bus and stepped out. "Well," he said, looking at her with a grin, "you ready to go face whatever comes next?" Lyra nodded firmly. "I am," she said. She felt stronger than ever, ready to take on any challenge, large or small. The city around them seemed less intimidating now, filled with possibilities instead of judgment. As they walked together through the terminal, Lyra realized something important. The world would always have those who underestimated her, who judged by appearances alone. But she didn't need to prove herself to them anymore. She only needed to trust in her own strength, her mind, and her courage, and with that, nothing could stop her. Jack looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. He knew she would continue to amaze everyone she met. Lyra was proof that greatness didn't have to come from size or power. It came from courage, intelligence, and the will to act when it mattered most. And somewhere deep in the bustling city, the echoes of the day's events began to spread. The story of the small alien who had saved the hub, the drones, and even lives itself would travel far. People would talk, some in disbelief, others in admiration. Lyra had shown them all that strength wasn't measured in inches or arms. It was measured in heart, mind, and action. And for the first time in her life, Lyra walked through the spaceport not as the small alien everyone ignored, but as a hero.